Good morning, students. Today we are going to study lesson number 9, Life in Towns and Villages, Vital Towns and Thriving Villages, 600 BC to 300 AD. So, in this chapter we are going to study about important towns and growing villages from the period 600 before Christ to 300 Anno Domini. This period saw many developments both in the rural and urban life of the people in India. Life in the villages. Although there was no dearth of urban centers, coastal towns, capitals and religious centers in India during the early phase of the Indian history 600 BC to 300 AD, this country has always been predominantly a land of villages. And still it maintains this rural trait. So, since 600 to 300 AD, our country has seen so many urban centers, coastal towns, capitals and religious centers. But still today, and since the very beginning, our country has always been predominantly a land of villages till today. Agricultural expansion. With the invention of new tools and implements, more and more land was brought under cultivation, which led to agricultural intensification. Scholars hold the view that about 3,000 years ago, the iron began to be abundantly used in India, and iron axes and iron plows were in common use for clearing forests and increasing agricultural production. The development of irrigation works like canals, wells, tanks, etc., coupled with a new system of transplantation, further led to an increase in agricultural production. All this led to flourishing villages without the support of which kings and kingdoms could hardly survive. According to our scholars, 3,000 years ago, after the discovery of iron began to be abundantly used in India as hand axes and iron plows. And with those implements, they could clear large amount of forest for increasing their agricultural production. They also built canals, wells and tanks, which led to many villages becoming flourished and supporting the kings in growing their kingdom. Who lived in the villages? Naturally, the agricultural classes formed the major part of the village population. They included the landowners, the plowmen and the landless laborers, including slaves, who were known by different names in southern and northern parts of the country. The largest landowner in India was named as Grama Bojak in northern part of the country and Velalar in the southern part of the country, particularly in Tamil Nadu. The king often assigned him the duty of collecting the land revenue. He was all in his village, himself as a policeman and himself as a judge. A village samiti was appointed for his help. There was also many craftspersons in the villages like the blacksmiths, potters, weavers and carpenters, etc. The people in the villages fully cooperated with each other and lived in peace. They discussed their affairs in open. They cooperated with one another to build roads, parks and public places. Villages were linked with one another by roads and waterways. Corn, cotton, sugarcane, fruit and vegetables were grown. Forced labor was not known at all. In 600 BC to 300 AD, the agricultural classes were comprised of the landowners, the plowmen, the landless laborers, and including slaves, who were known by different names in different parts of the country, such as the landowners were known as Graham Bojaka in northern part of India, whereas in Tamil Nadu or in other parts of South India, they were known as Velalar. These landowners were appointed by the king for collecting land revenues. He was given the power to become a policeman and also a judge. The king appointed a group of village samiti to assist him. Along with the farmers, there also lived blacksmiths, potters, weavers and carpenters along with them. All the villagers, they lived happily with cooperation with one another. Togetherly they built roads, parks, public places. The farmers grew corn, cotton, sugarcane, fruits and other vegetables. Until now, we have no record of forced labor during those days. Life in the cities. During this period, many towns and cities also flourished. According to historians, this period saw the second urbanization. The first urbanization in India began during the Harappan period. It came to an end with the advent of the Aryans in 1500 BC. Being the rural folk, the Aryans destroyed the Harappan towns, one by one, which remained extinct during the next 1000 years. We again hear of the new towns and cities during the age of the Buddha in the 6th century BC. That is why the period from the 6th century BC to the 4th century BC, or the age of Buddha, is known as the second urbanization in India. Towns like Kausambhi, Kravasti, Ayodhya, Kapilavastu, Vaishali, Rajgriha, Pataliputra, etc. flourished during this period. We have already studied about the Harappan civilization. Harappan civilization was known as the first urbanization, and later on it got destroyed by the Aryans. It was because of Aryans that the Harappan civilization came to extinct. And on previous chapter we studied about Gautam Buddha. From 6th century BC to the 4th century BC, this period was called the second urbanization, or the age of the Buddha. During the second urbanization, we saw that many towns like Kausambhi, Kravasti, Ayodhya, Kapilavastu, Vaishali, Rajgir, Pataliputra, etc. flourished. Finding out about ancient towns and cities. No doubt these ancient towns and cities existed long ago, but 2500 to 3000 years ago, a general question comes in our mind: how do we are able to get knowledge about these towns and cities? Luckily, different historical sources, both literary sources and archaeological sources, along with recorded accounts of some foreign travelers, come to our help. So far, we are very sure that 2500 to 3000 years ago, there existed many ancient towns and cities in India. But how do we know about that? We come to know about it with the help of our historians through their literary sources and archaeological sources, along with recorded accounts of some foreign travelers who visited India during those times. Literary sources. Among the literary sources, the Buddhist literary works like the Jatakas and the Tripitakas, as well as the Sangam literature, come to our help. From the stories and episodes given in these books, help the historians to form an idea of the social and economic conditions of the people of those days. But they also get a lot of information about different towns and cities and their relations with the surrounding villages. There are so many literary sources that tells us about ancient India. Some of the most famous ones are the Buddhist literary sources like the Jatakas and the Tripitakas, as well as the Sangam literature. And through these books or through these literary works, we come to find out what were the social and economic conditions of the people during those days. Archaeological sources. Along with the literary sources, historians have made us made use of various archaeological sources like ruins of ancient towns and cities, different sculptures and images, inscriptions and numismatics or coins, etc. The sculptures and statues cast in stone and metal not only throw a good deal of light on the art of the period but also help us a lot in forming an idea of the social and economic life of the people, particularly the link between the city and the village dwellers. Inscription found engraved on rocks, pillars, copper plates, stone tablets and canvas, etc. not only provide us first-rate knowledge about ancient India monarchs and their reign, but also throw a good deal of light on the life of ordinary people of the different towns and cities. In this connection, Ashokan inscriptions, the Allahabad pillar inscription of Harisena and inscription engraved on the iron pillar of Chandragupta II of Mehrauli in Delhi deserve a special mention. These inscriptions supplement what we learn from literature and other sources. We come to know about ancient India not only through literary sources but also through archaeological sources like ruins of ancient towns and cities, different sculptures and images, inscriptions and numismatics or coins. Numismatics means the study of coin. We have found inscriptions engraved on rocks, pillars, copper plates, stone tablets, and even on canvas. Some of the examples are the Allahabad pillar inscription of Harisena and inscriptions engraved on the iron pillar of Chandragupta by the Chandragupta Maurya II. Coins. Coins used for measuring money have proved very useful in solving many chronological puzzles. They collaborate with sometimes modify the information received from literature. These coins are our only source of information with regard to Bactrian and Indo-Greek rulers. The inscription on these coins, both in Greek and Kharosthi, clearly indicate that these rulers must have ruled over northern India. Similarly, these coins throw remarkable light on the personal accomplishment of certain rulers, example Samudragupta, and also on religious views of others, example Kanishka. Samudragupta's coin have the vehicle of Vishnu inscribed on them, clearly indicate that he was a devotee of the deity. Others with Veena attest his love for music. These coins are of various metals, gold, silver, copper or alloy. Alloy means mixture of two or more metals. The metal used and its purity undoubtedly reflect the economic condition of the country at that time. Their discovery at different places helps us in fixing the extent of various kingdoms in ancient India. I think everyone knows what is a coin. In ancient India, coins were used as money and it was made up of various metals like gold, silver or copper, depending on the economic condition of the kingdom. The inscriptions on these coins were varied from rulers to rulers. For instance, let's take example of Samudragupta. Through his coins, he wanted to show his personal accomplishment along with his religious views. Account of foreign travelers and sailors. In finding out about the ancient cities, various foreign travelers and visitors like Greek, Roman, Chinese and Tibetan etc. have helped us a lot. Two Greek historians travelers, Herodotus and Megasthenes, have thrown an important light on the history of ancient India. Herodotus in his book Histories supplies much information regarding the Perso-Greek War and the political connection of northwest India with Persia in the 5th century BC. Megasthenes, in his book Indica, throws a good deal of light on the Mauryan administration and society, and also on the geography and products of India. Arrian and Ptolemy are two other Greek writers. The former gives a detailed description of Alexander's invention on the evidence of Alexander's admiral Nearchus, and the latter in geography furnishes geographical information of greater interest. Similarly, the Chinese pilgrims, especially Fa Hian 399 to 404 AD, Hyun Sang 629 to 45 AD, and Itzing 673 to 95 AD, who visited this country in search of knowledge and Buddhist literature, have left valuable accounts about the religious, social and political conditions of India. Fa Hian's description about Pataliputra and Gupta administration, and Hyun Sang's account of the political, religious and social conditions of India towards the middle of the 7th century AD have proved very useful to us in reconstructing the history of India from 400 to 700 AD. Tibetan historian Taranath, in his History of Buddhism, gives us very important information which we can profitably consult. Many foreign travelers visited India in ancient India. Some of them were Herodotus and Megasthenes from Greece, Fa Hian and Hyun Sa from China, even Arrian and Ptolemy. They were Greek writers. They have written about Alexander's invasion to India. Tibetan historian Taranath, he wrote a book about history of Buddhism, which gave us very much idea of how Buddhism existed in India. Cities of different kinds and many functions. As already said, there were many cities and towns flourishing between the 6th century BC to the 4th century AD. Some of the most important were those of Kausambi, Shravasti, Ayodhya, Kapilvastu, Rajgir, Pataliputra, Mathura, etc. All these towns and cities were flourishing and had some characteristics features of their own. They had planned layouts, regular roads and streets, public drains, fortifications, temples, monasteries, elegant residence of the nobility and the royalty, etc. In the beginning, the towns were very small in size, but with the passage of time, they grew in size as well as in numbers. Particularly, when a town became a capital of some ruler, it grew both in size and importance. Sometimes, when some traders or craftsmen lived in a particular town, it soon became important as a center of that particular craft or trade. Some towns became popular as coastal towns, while others became famous as religious centers. In the contemporary literature, we find a number of these flourishing towns. Some of the most important were Mathura, Pataliputra, Ujjain, Pratisthana, Brigukacha, Tamrailipti, Shravasti, Champa, Rajgriha, Ayodhya, Kausambi, Vaishali, Pava, Kushinagar, Borj, Kaveri Patinam, Arikamendu, etc. All these towns were centers of trade, craft, art and administration. A brief description of one of them, say Mathura, shall justify this point. Different crafts also developed in those days. The occupation of weaving and dyeing of cloth had made ample progress. Gandhara, Varanasi and Shividesa were especially noted for woolen, silken and cotton cloth respectively. The art of making beautiful ornaments had also advanced. Different kinds of ornaments of gold, silver, gems diamonds, and ivory were made. Other chief occupations were those of blacksmith, pottery, carpentry, physician, boatman, musician, priest, hunter, etc. One peculiarity of this period is that different organizations of men following different occupation and crafts had been formed called Sangha or guild. Each guild had its own president who was called by different names like Pramukh or Jeshtikha or Shresthin. This president was greatly respected in the society. Each guild or occupational sangha settled quarrels among the members and helped in the purchase and sale of their goods. During this period, trade was carried out on by land as well as by sea. The means of conveyance used by some traders for carrying the goods from one place to another were usually bullock carts, camels, or ponies. Such traders traveled in caravans in order to be safe from thieves and dacoits on the wayside. The government often sent armed forces with such caravans for their protection. Trade with foreign countries was carried on both by sea and land routes. From the Buddhist literature, we come to know that at that time, trade relations of India had been established with many foreign countries like Sicilian, Burma, Java, Sumatra, Malaya, Arabia, and several Western countries. Generally, cotton, woolen and silken cloth, blankets, carpets, medicines, essence, oils, manufactured ivory goods, pearls, gems, etc. were exported from India. Important ports of that time were Brigukacha or modern Broj, Suparaka, modern Supara, and Tamralipiti, Tamluk, situated in West Bengal. The traders too had organized themselves into trade guilds like arts and craft guilds. The wealthiest of all traders generally became the president of the trade guild, and he was also called Shresthirs or Sethi. Without the permission of this Samiti, no villager could either sell or mortgage this land. There were pasture lands around each village. This was the common property of the village. In these pasture lands were the grazing grounds of village cattle. The graziers were called Gopalakas. In previous topic, we have discussed about second urbanization, where many new cities like Kausambi, Shravasti, Ayodhya, Kapilvastu, Rajgiri, Pataliputra, Mathura, etc. flourished. But how did they become so popular? Every city or every town had its own characteristics, like they had their own planned layouts, regular roads, streets, public drains, fortifications, temples, monasteries, etc. In the beginning, every town were very small. Even its population was very less. But with passage in time, it became more and more in number. Some of the characteristics how a town becomes big are when it becomes a capital of a particular area, or when some traders or craftsmen begin to live together, it becomes a commercial hub. Some towns became very popular as they were located in coastal areas, and some town became famous as it was a center of religion. The period from 6th century BC to 4th century AD saw many changes as people started the occupation of weaving and dyeing of clothes. Even the art of making beautiful ornaments also advanced. They made different kinds of ornaments using gold, silver, gems, diamonds and ivory. Even many other occupations like blacksmithing, pottery, carpentry, physician, boatman, musician, priest, hunter, etc. became popular. And these group of peoples began to form their own guild or sangha. And each guild had its own president, who were called by different names in different areas like Pramukh or Jeshtika or Jeshtin. The president was very much respected. It settled quarrels between other members of the guild. From the Buddhist literature, we come to know that during those days, India had been establishing trade with many foreign countries like Ceylon, Burma, Java, Sumatra, Malaya, Arabia, and other Western countries too, where they exported cotton, woolen and silken cloth, blankets, carpets, medicines, essence, oils, manufactured ivory goods, pearls, gems, etc. I hope everyone has understood the explanation. So if you have any kinds of doubts, you can message me on my WhatsApp number. Thank you.